Our speaker today is Robert Lawrence. He's going to be talking about how to prepare your NSF Biosketch, keeping in mind some new recommendations for 2020. This is part of a series of professional development workshops organized by the Division of Research this spring. And all of these workshops will be recorded for your future use. So if you are with us today, you don't have to take notes. And there will be some people joining us after today and watching the recording. So if everyone's situated all right, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody but Robert. And there'll be a point in the presentation a little later on for your questions. But if you have a concern or a question in the meantime, you can also use the chat box and ask us there.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks all for joining today. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some people that I haven't seen for a while on Zoom, if nothing else. I want to mention Jennifer Flanagan and Elizabeth Lukert from Office of Sponsored Programs are here as well to answer questions. So thank you also for joining. But yeah, the topic for today's webinar is updating your NSF Biosketch for 2020 with some of the new requirements in mind that the NSF is rolling out. So we'll talk about some of those things and also some of the content that goes into the Biosketch as well. Beginning with the proposal and award policies and procedures guide, which most of you know is the PAPPG. They are releasing a new version of this in 2020. It was to go into effect on June 1st. They have pushed back some of those requirements, including those related to the Biosketch, to October 5th because of some of the delays related to COVID. So even though that requirement date has been pushed back, it's never too early to get in the habit of using the tools the NSF is going to start requiring, knowing that you're going to have to do that sooner or later anyways. So the biographical sketch is required for all senior personnel. And I've highlighted here the major changes that are going into effect in 2020, which is that NSF is requiring the use of NSF approved formats, or in other words, tools for producing those documents. Basically, that means that in the past, if you've used some kind of a Word document template or older versions of your Biosketch and just have continually updated those, you're going to have to switch over to using these tools to make them for the future going forward. So those tools are the ScienceCV web-based tool and the NSF fillable PDF. Those are pretty much the only two options. After we go through these slides, we'll take a look at both of those tools so that we can kind of see how they work and answer any questions that you may have. I'll just note that on these slides, I've included some links down here to the content that I'm showing from the web pages on the right-hand side. And I can share these slides with anybody if you'd like. You can send me an email and I can send them back to you. But you can go here, of course, to the NSF's pages. They always have additional information for those that would like to dig deeper, FAQs and things of that nature, and also a 40-minute webinar about these formats that kind of explains in detail about how they work. I think a lot of it is self-explanatory. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but we will give just kind of a brief introduction to how those look and how they operate. I wanted to take a moment to define what senior personnel includes or what that means. And so when they say that you have to include a Biosketch for all of the senior personnel, this is talking about all PIs and all co-PIs. That doesn't include postdocs or graduate students or other staff necessarily. So this also applies to the other documents that they ask for the current and pending support and the COA documents as well. So the first section of the biographical sketch is professional preparation. In other words, this is your academic background, and this is pretty self-explanatory. I've included on the right an example of a Biosketch that I made using ScienceCV for myself. So basically, you're just going to be putting in your undergraduate, your graduate education, and also your postdoctoral training if you did a postdoc. Sometimes people put this under appointments, which is the next section, but just to be clear, the NSF wants to see this in professional preparation. This also includes the location of the schools that you attended, the degrees that you got, and the years when you received those degrees or when you completed your postdoctoral training. The next section is appointments. So although in the previous section, professional preparation, you kind of list things chronologically, in this section, you're going to do it reverse chronologically, beginning with your current position. And most people, I think, will probably go back to their postdoc. And I mean, you don't want to go all the way back to the job that you had in high school or anything like that, but you can go back a little bit further if it's appropriate, I suppose. There's nothing saying that you can't do that. So for mine, I just went back to the first job that I got after my postdoc, which wasn't that long ago. So they have a clarification in the PAPPG about what this includes. So they say any titled academic, professional, or institutional position, whether or not remuneration is received, whether or not it's full-time or part-time. And so that means voluntary positions, adjunct, visiting, or honorary can also be included there as well. So for those who have, a pretty extensive academic background, this could include, a lot of things. On the other hand, if you're just kind of beginning your academic career as an assistant professor, this list may not be so long. And that's okay. So the next section is products. For a lot of people, this means publications, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It can also include data sets, software patents, and copyrights. You don't want to include things here that haven't been accepted for publication. Also, you don't want to include things like lectures or posters or things of that nature. One thing to bear in mind with this is that this section includes, it's kind of broken down into two subsections. So there's 5 products that are most closely related to the proposed project. So if you're putting publications here, for instance, you'll want to tailor those publications that are most relevant to the proposal. And then there's another section, other significant products, whether or not related to the proposed project. Here you can put other things that are important, but maybe not as relevant to the proposal. So again, you can have up to 5 here. I've just included 2 of my own. So you need to make sure you include full citation information on this, including the author list. If you can't squeeze everything into the 2 pages, I think it's okay if you shorten the author list down to et al. If you need to make space, especially on some of those publications that may have a long list of authors. And I think that's about all I need to say about products. The last section is synergistic activities. And unlike the other sections, this one's a little bit more broad in how you might define what goes here. Basically, they want to see things related to broader impacts, integration and transfer of knowledge, things that you've done outside of campus, maybe related to professional development, teaching and training, innovations, tool development, STEM outreach, things of that nature. It's important that the 5 distinct examples that you list here, right, I should say up to 5, it doesn't have to be 5, but that they are separate things. You don't want to break one thing down into several smaller things and list those separately. They want to see them as all distinct items. And so those are your synergistic activities. Going back to the tools that are used to develop the Biosketch that are going to be required, I should say. Let's talk for a little bit about the Science CV web tool and then about the NSF fillable PDF. So I'm going to switch out of these slides and I'll share the Science CV tool. So you can find the Science CV tool just by doing a Google search for Science CV, but it's hosted here through the NCBI webpage. This is something that was developed in coordination with the NSF as well as NIH to try to have some kind of a standardized tool for producing biographical information and basically just making the process a little bit easier for making Biosketch material for various different proposals. So I'll enter here, click here to start. You can log in through your NSF login or your ERA Commons login if you have one. I'm going to use an NCBI login that I've created where I've already kind of uploaded my publications and some other basic information that'll go into it. So I'll sign in there. And if you're signing in for the first time, the first thing that you'll want to do is create a new document. And going in here, it gives you the option to do an NIH Biosketch, which is 5 pages and includes a lot of things that aren't in the NSF Biosketch or the NSF Biosketch, which is what we're talking about today. There's also a few other options in there as well. And you can start from scratch with a blank document. You can import from an existing document that you've made in the past, or you can import from an external source. It gives you a few options for that. I imported mine from ORCID. So those of you who are familiar with your ORCID IDs know that that's another tool that's kind of used to help standardize biographical information for different outputs. And then you can make it public or private. So I'm going to go back to the NSF Biosketch that I've already made for myself and just kind of show you how the input works on this. Again, most of this is self-explanatory. Professional preparation is just going to ask you information about the school that you went to, the location of it, the years that you attended there, and then just fill that in. Same thing with your postdoc information. And then going down to appointments, same thing. It's just the dates for those appointments, the names, locations, and you also have the option here of selecting which ones you want to include. So in my case, I'm not going to include things that I did in my undergraduate. So I've unchecked those and I just want to include things since my postdoc. So I've checked those ones. And the nice thing about that is, you can check or uncheck various things on this according to how you want your output to look. So yeah, kind of the same thing with products. I've imported my publications on NCBI so that I can just check and uncheck the ones that I want to include as the 5 that are most relevant. You can also import them from ORCID if you have that already set up. And then same thing here with the 5 that are less related to the proposal. You can just check and uncheck the ones that you want to use. And then on synergistic activities, this format's a little bit more open-ended. It's basically just a text box where you can enter in a brief description about what the synergistic activity is. I've put in parentheses the years that are applicable to that or to each of those. And then, again, you can list up to 5. So in Science CV, you're just going to be inputting all this information, and when you're all done, you can export it as a PDF or you can export it as XML. You don't have the option to export as a Word document because they only want to see PDFs when you submit the proposal. So all you have to do is click that. It takes a minute, and then it just finishes up and gives you a nice PDF that's all formatted the way that it's supposed to be, the way that they want to see it. And then hopefully that will be under the 2-page limit that you have for NSF. I'm not sure what happens if it ends up being longer than 2 pages, but I assume it'll probably let you know. So that's the Science CV tool. I'll just pause. Oh, somebody asked a question, will I share the slides with us later? Yes, I can share the slides. What's the easiest way to do that? Is there a way to share them, Rachel, through Zoom or just by email?
Yeah, there's not a good way to attach them and share them right now to everyone. You can attach a file in the chat, but it's, yeah, even then, I don't think you can share a file in the chat right now. So we can post them on the Return to Research page along with the recording.
Okay. That would be good. And if anybody wants them sooner, you can just email me directly and I'll send them back to you. So lastly, let's just look at the fillable PDF. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory. Let me just share that really quick. Oh, so this is basically the PDF output from the ScienceCV tool. A nice thing about that is that it'll include hyperlinks for publications, which can be useful sometimes. But let's look at the fillable PDF. This is, I mean, it's just basically boxes where you're entering text in. It's all manual. Nice thing is that it does have links to the PAPPG, which gives further description for each of these sections. For instance, if you want to know more details about what's required for those. One limitation that I do see with the fillable PDF is that these boxes are all set. You can't adjust the size of them. And so while I think there's sufficient space for professional preparation and appointments in most cases, when you get down into here, this box for other significant products, it's really hard to include 5 publications in that little space. So even if you shorten it to et al. on the author list. So that's just one limitation to keep in mind. And then, you know, after you've entered the information in, you just save the PDF, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So that's pretty much all that I had to share today as far as what's new with the NSF Biosketch and what the requirements are for the 2020 PAPPG. I guess we can take a moment now to answer any questions. And again, I have Elizabeth and Jennifer from OSP on hand to also give their input as well. Do any of you have any questions or anything else that you'd like to add?
Hello. Can I ask a question this way?
Yes, hi, is that Hiroki?
Yeah, this is Hiroki. Thank you very much, Robert. So my question is that when you are using the Science CV, other than the ORCID, are there any other bibliographical database that we can import, such as Google Scholar or other stuff? Do they offer other options?
No, they do not. I think it's just the ORCID, the NCBI page, or any documents that you already have uploaded in NSF's webpage somewhere.
Okay, so that means that we first need to maintain our ORCID database first.
Right, and
got it. Yeah, thank you.
I think they're kind of trying to push people that way.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, like I was saying, I uploaded mine from NCBI, which is affiliated with PubMed, and it's kind of like Google Scholar. I think you can do a search there and pull your publications out from that without too much difficulty.
Yep, thank you.
Other questions for Robert? You can take yourself off of mute and ask directly. You can type in the chat feature.
And I guess I can also open it up to Elizabeth or Jennifer. If either of you have anything to add, I know that you've kind of followed the development of these new PAPPG guidelines that have been rolled out. Is there anything that I've missed that we should also discuss? Oh, Elizabeth, it looks like you're on mute.
I'm showing Elizabeth is still trying to connect to audio.
Well, Yeah, while she works that out, were there any other questions that anybody had or anything else that they'd like to discuss?
If I may, I have another question.
Sure.
Sorry about that. So I saw that there is also the option to prepare the current and pending fundings by using the Science CV. How usable is it?
I haven't gone through the process of doing the current and pending funding with that tool. I think they also have a fillable PDF for that as well. It's kind of parallel to the Biosketch.
Okay. Yeah.
Elizabeth or Jennifer, do you have any experience with that?
Elizabeth, we still can't hear you. I'm sorry. Did you call in, Elizabeth, on a phone? Okay, I'm going to read some numbers out here. Are you 1068 at the end? 9242. 3460. Yes, okay. I'm going to try something called merge with audio. Let's see if that works.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, that worked.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Sorry.
So my question was about the current and pending funding options that were available in the Science CV website. So is that service mature enough that we can actually put our funding information to prepare CNP?
Yes, you should be able to.
Great. So I should give it a try.
Yes.
Thank you
yes,
very much.
it should be working. So the other thing that there are a few things that I just wanted to add, information that we learned through attending the different webinars. With some people were noticing that when they uploaded the Science CV Biosketch, that it was going on to more than 2 pages. And that may be because they're using an older version of Science CV, but they need to make sure, the PI needs to make sure that that Biosketch is only 2 pages, because we can't submit in Fastlane or research.gov. We'll get an error message if we try to submit. It will say, you know, your Biosketch is exceeding the number of pages, but that may be the reason. It may be an older version of Science CV that you're using. The other thing is you can continue to use, like if you create a Biosketch in Science CV, you can continue to use that CV, but just make sure that you're updating the products for, you know, each proposal, because those may change, the products that are related to the proposal that you're submitting. Some people will just keep, okay, I'm just going to keep uploading the same CV. You really need to pay attention to the products that are associated with the proposal. And then a word about the synergistic activities, because the NSF gets a lot of questions about this. They want them to be as concise as possible. They don't want multiple examples within a synergistic activity. So don't give several examples of workshops that you've done, for instance, if that's a synergistic activity. Just combine it into one brief sentence. And then with the fillable forms, just make sure that you are not altering the forms. And like, for instance, in the fillable current and pending form, it's 15 pages long. And even if you don't have information that's going to fill all those 15 pages, don't delete any of the pages. They want the format kept as is. Don't delete instructions. So those are things to keep in mind. And finally, if the NSF is very much interested in getting feedback from PIs on both the Science CV and the fillable forms. And they do have an email policy at nsf.gov. So they're still looking for feedback from PIs because there's been a lot of questions and they've made alterations to the forms based on that feedback.
Thank you very much.
And I have actually contacted them, and they've been pretty.
So I have a question, and regarding the on Science EV. Actually last night I tried, and I clicked I know you have two options. One is log in the NHERA Commons. The other is the log to the grant.gov.com. Grant.gov. So when I try to log in, it chooses the NSF tab. I tap it and try to use the same password and username which I used to log in for submitting my grant application. I was rejected. So do I have to use the different username password, or they should the same username and password should work here?
That's a good question. I don't know if you have any input on that, Elizabeth, or if that's a technical issue that you have to bring up with NSF.
I couldn't log in. I used the same username password which I used to use to log in the grant.gov site when I submit the NSF proposals. But that username password did not work there. So I think it should be the same, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kaiming. I don't have any answer for you on that. That's frustrating.
Yeah, I tried it last night. I thought I wanted to give it a try, and then I have some question for you guys during this call, but I tried. It didn't work for me. Maybe just me. I don't know.
Yeah. Anybody else had a similar issue out there that's used Science CV?
Actually, this is Emrah. I had a similar issue with the login. They asked me to, change my password, and I changed it. I couldn't log in this morning. So I have a similar issue.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's feedback that you can give to the NSF to help them improve that too.
Yeah, you may want to call the NSF tech support.
Yeah, and when you go to the Science CV page, I think there's a link there to contact NSF to give feedback or suggestions. Maybe just letting them know. As I was saying, I've reached out to them and they've been pretty responsive. Any other questions? Okay, well, if that's all we have to say, we can wrap things up, or I can turn the time back over to you, Rachel, if there's any other matters that you want to bring up with the audience of faculty that we have on hand.
I think that was our intended topic for the day. If there are urgent issues or things that you want to ask, we do happen to have the Vice President for Research with us on the call as well. Again, you can take yourself off mute or use the chat feature if there's something you wanted to raise.
And Rachel, we can also mention that next week we will have a town hall meeting specifically to talk about return to research.
Okay, looks like we're ready to wrap up for today at least. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you everyone for attending. And Robert, thanks
you.
for organizing. And Rachel.
Thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon, folks.